Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Revive Code. In this video, I will tell you how you should frame your answers in an AEM interview. Just follow the structure and adjust based on your current project. So, let's start. Explain AEM implementation in existing project. When the interviewer asks you this question, they don't expect that one fixed answer. They want to understand that your role, um, your understanding of AEM flows, and how to contribute it. So you can structure your answer like first, briefly explain what kind of project it was. Uh, for example, you can say that in my current project, we are using AEM sites to manage a multi country marketing website. Like that, you can be explained. Okay. And then you can explain your role about that I am working as a like senior front end developer or full stack developer, anything you can say, whatever your role, and mainly responsible for the developing reusable content, reusable component and integrating content. And also if you work with the backend services, so you can be explained like that. And also you can be say like the implementation of the like started with the requirement, so gathering from the business stakeholders whatever the requirement it was, and based on that we created like editable templates or reusable component under apps. Or if you are working with the backend services, so you can be said that we used like HTML for rendering, Sling models for backend logic, and client libs also for CSS and JavaScript. And as a content author, we can say that content authors managed content in the author environment, and it was published to the publish instant workflows. And we also configured dispatcher for caching and performance optimizations. So overall, AEM was used as a CMS to manage structural content, reusable components, and scalable deployment across the environment. Okay, so go to the next question. What are the modules available in AEM? You can say that in AEM, there are different modules like sites for web content management, assets for digital asset management, and forms for form handling. Uh, and another thing is communities for user generated content. And also, you can say like that in your current project or previous project, that how to work with that, like the structure you can say, like first list modules, then mention your one of your project whatever you just used, so you can be described like this. Next, there is a discuss on AEM architecture. Here you can say that AEM architecture, that is the based on Sling, OSDI and JCR repository. It mainly consists of author and publish, instance, and dispatcher, is used for caching and balancing. And also in your project, that how to you set up your environment, you can also be structured and mention that core technologies, and you can explain that author, publisher, dispatcher. If interviewer asks, then you can be describe it. Next, how to create custom components in AEM. You can frame it like in your current project or previous project, that you created reusable components under apps. You also use that HTML for markup, Sling models for backend logic, and if you use any of the UI, so that the Granite UI for dialog creations, client leads were added for CSS and JS. So there is a full structure you can be elaborate, like component folder. There is an HTML, then dialog, then Sling model. Okay, so always keep this order. You can be follow. Next question is that how to create the client lib in AEM. So we created a client lib. There is a client library folder was there and defined categories. We need to add it CSS, JS files and includes them in component using client lib include. And keep remember that if interviewer ask, then you explain or otherwise you don't need to be explained here. Next question that is the what is AEM? Adobe Experience Manager and its key features. Here I already described that Adobe Experience Manager is a CMS that helps manage digital experience across websites and apps. Key features include content management, asset management, workflow, automation, personalizations, and integration with Adobe tools. Go to next question. Explain the difference between AEM sites and AEM assets. AEM sites is used for managing website pages and content, and AEM assets is used for managing digital files like images, videos, PDF, and other media. Next question. How do you create a new component in AEM? You can say when the interviewer asks this question, they want to check that whether you understand the full component lifecycle or just for the not for just HTML. Okay, so you should answer in a structured way that in your project to create a new component that you first created a component folder under apps inside your project structure, and then you added the component definitions with that Sling resource type and component properties. And next, you created the HTML file to define the markup structure. After that, you created a dialog using Granite UI so that authors can configure the component from the authoring environment. And if backend logic was required, you created a Sling model and mapped the properties using model annotation. Then you created a client lib folder to add the CSS and JS for styling or functionality. And finally, you added the components to the editable templates policy so that authors can use it on pages. And always keep in mind there is an this order of this, like create the component folders, add HTML, create the dialog and configure Sling resource type and add component to template policy. And this shows the interviewer that you understand both the front-end technologies and also the in the AEM structured. Next, describe the process of creating a custom workflow in AEM. In your project, you can say that we created a custom workflow When we needed a specific content approval or business process automation, first we went to tools, then workflow, then models, and created a new workflow model. Then we added the different type of steps like process step for custom backend logic, participant step for user approval, or split or and split if conditional flow was required. If custom logic was needed, then we created a Java implementing with workflow process interface and deploy it to the OSDI service. After configuring all steps and transitions, we validate the model and deploy it. Finally, we have to test the workflow by triggering it on a page or asset or monitor log for the proper execution. Next, how do you implement error handling in AEM workflows? With that, you can be explained that in your project, how to implement that error handling mainly inside the custom workflow process steps, and if need that Java logic, then we need to wrap the business logic inside the try catch block to prevent the workflow crashes. And we also logged error properly using the SLF4J logger for debugging and monitoring. If a failure occurred, so we have to configure the failure routes in the workflow model so the workflow could move to an error handling step by step instead of stopping completely. And in some case, we have to trigger the email notification or alerts when the critical failures happen. And additionally, that we ensure that proper validation before the processing data to reduce runtime error. And you can be remember that fourth structure of that. Um, First, like error handling in custom process, that is the try catch block, this one. Then proper login, then failure routes in workflow model, notification or alert, and preventive validation. What is Sling in the context of AEM? Apache Sling is the web framework on which AEM is built. It is responsible for handling HTTP requests and mapping them to content stored in the JCR repository. In AEM, when a user hits a URL, Sling resolves that request based on the resource type and selects the appropriate script or component to render the content. Sling also follows a resource based architecture where the everything is treated as a resource, pages, components, assets, and rendering is done based on the Sling resource type. Next, that is the what is the purpose of the Sling model in AEM? Sling model is used to map JCL properties to Java objects and connect backend logic with HTL components. In AEM, Sling models are used to map JCR properties and request data to Java object. They act as a bridge between the repository and the HTL component. There is a write a simple JavaScript code to fetch the data from an AEM endpoint using Ajax. JavaScript code you have to use. If you need, you can be use async await and try and catch. Explain the difference between a page and a template. Template defines the structure and layout. Page is created using that template and contains actual content. How do you optimize AEM performance? In your project, you have to say that how to optimize the performance, like use dispatcher caching, client lib minification, CDN integration, lazy loading, optimizing backend queries. These all the things we can use and optimize our AM performance. We also monitored logs and used tools to identify slow components or memory issues. Front-end level, we optimize the client libraries by minifying and combining CSS, JS file, enabling loading for images, and reducing unnecessary DOM rendering. Explain how to integrate AEM with Adobe Analytics. You can say like this that in our project we integrated AEM with Adobe Analytics using the Adobe Launch, which is now known as a Adobe Data Collection. First, we configured the Adobe Analytics report shoot and created rules inside the launch. Then in AEM, we implemented Adobe Client Data layer to capture page level and component level events. We mapped required variables like page name, component interactions, custom events. The launch script was included in the page template, so tracking was loaded globally. Finally, we validated the tracking using browser developer tools and Adobe debugging extensions to ensure data was being sent correctly. So that's how you should approach the AM interview questions with structured clarity and project based explanations. Understand the flow, customize it to your experience, and speak confidently. If this video helped you, stay connected. Thank you. See you in the next one.